8 missiles. 1:43 a.m. The first blast ripped open the black sky over Mykolaiv, followed by a chain of detonations that rolled like thunder across the southern front. The Russians didn't stop with missiles. Over 320 attack drones flooded the airspace, striking power plants, water stations, and even children's hospitals. They aimed for fear, not just destruction. The goal was clear: drain Ukraine's will to fight. But fear has a strange way of transforming in war. In the streets, people ran for cover. Yet in the shadows, others ran toward the noise. Territorial defense teams grabbed whatever they could: rifles, old anti-air guns, even homemade launchers. By dawn, the air was thick with the smoke. Entire apartment blocks were gutted. Rescue crews clawed through rubble with bare hands. Power grids lay silent, and still the drones came.
Secondary blasts
after
ignited
wave.
nearby tanks and
That's when a
ruptured fuel
small,
lines.
encrypted message flashed across Ukrainian comms. Package ready, proceeding to target. It wasn't from NATO, it wasn't from the regular army. This was a strike team no one in Moscow expected. Volunteers with no official insignia, no chain of command, and no fear of dying. They weren't aiming for soldiers. They weren't aiming for tanks. They had one target: the lifeline of Russia's southern war machine. If you burn our hospitals, we will burn your fuel. In a dimly lit command center beneath Kiev, the air was heavy with the smell of coffee and diesel. Maps of Ukraine glowed under red lights. Every missile trajectory, every drone path, every radar blip, tracked in real time. Colonel Andriy Melnik, a man who hadn't slept in 36 hours, leaned over the operations table. His voice was calm but edged with steel. Deploy the Black Sea package. No one asked questions. They all knew what it meant. Within minutes, encrypted messages zipped through NATO's secure channels. Somewhere off the coast, the USS Ross, an American destroyer, shifted position. Her radar towers swept the night like silent sentinels. Below deck, technicians armed with electronic warfare systems powered up. Systems designed not to shoot, but to blind. As the 9th drone approached Kiev, something strange happened. Its navigation feed went haywire. The drone banked sharply and slammed into an empty field miles away from its target. Seconds later, 2 more fell out of the sky, as if yanked by an invisible hand. Russia had no idea. To them, it looked like random failures. But in reality, the US Navy was playing a different kind of game, not intercepting, but hijacking the attackers mid-air. And in that moment, Ukraine's air defenses found their breathing space. The missile salvos slowed. The drone swarm broke apart. But here's the thing. This wasn't the end of the assault. It was only the pause before Moscow unleashed something far more dangerous, something no one had seen in this war before. And when it came, it would target more than just cities. It would go for Ukraine's very heartbeat. 2:17 a.m. The pause ended. From a hidden launch site deep inside occupied territory, Russia fired what Ukrainian intelligence later called the Ghost Lance. It wasn't just a missile. It was a hybrid, part hypersonic projectile, part electronic warfare pod. On radar, it looked like nothing special. But the moment it breached Ukrainian airspace, communication lines began to crackle. Cell towers in 3 provinces went dark. Air defense radar screens fuzzed into static. Even encrypted military radios hissed with white noise. It wasn't built to destroy buildings. It was built to blind the nation. In an underground hospital in Kharkiv, the lights flickered and went out. Surgeons continued by flashlight. Ambulances, stripped of GPS, drove blind through blacked-out streets. In one small town, a firefighter's radio went silent mid-rescue. The attack was surgical in its cruelty. Without targeting a single person directly, it cut the arteries of the country's survival systems. But here's what Moscow didn't count on. Halfway across the world, at a Navy cyber warfare hub in Maryland, US operators were already inside the Ghost Lance's brain. They had seconds to either shut it down or turn it against its masters. And in that decision, one keystroke could mean the difference between a crippled Ukraine or a humiliated Kremlin. But when the counter-command went through, it didn't have the effect anyone expected. The US cyber team didn't just type in a command. They injected a parasite. This code, written months earlier, was designed to hijack Russian missile guidance in mid-flight and loop it back toward its source. On the big screen, the Ghost Lance's telemetry began to flicker. Longitude, latitude, altitude. They danced like static on a broken TV. Then, the missile's vector shifted. Inside a Russian command bunker, alarms howled. "Course deviation detected," one officer shouted. In war rooms like these, seconds are centuries. The commander's fist slammed the table, but it was already too late. In Ukrainian skies, the Ghost Lance turned, climbing to a dizzying altitude before diving, straight toward the Black Sea. A blinding flash lit up the horizon. The impact registered not in Kiev, but in a secret Russian drone facility just off Crimea's coast. It was the first time in the war that a Russian precision weapon had been turned against its own forces in real time. But victory came at a cost. The parasite had done its job. And then it kept going. Within minutes, Russian military satellites detected strange anomalies across their entire weapons network. Dozens of dormant missiles began running silent self-checks. A warhead in Kaliningrad powered up its targeting systems, without human command. The Americans had unleashed a storm, and no one was sure they could control it. And in that moment, the question shifted from can we win to can we survive what we just started? It started like a ripple. One compromised missile, then 2, then 20. The parasite didn't just infect the Ghost Lance. It leapt like a virus into every linked Russian guidance system it could find. Some warheads began pinging false targets in Siberia. Others recalculated trajectories toward empty ocean coordinates, but a few didn't. A handful of heavy payloads started spinning their guidance like a roulette wheel. Each second they remained airborne was another second the world held its breath. In the Pentagon, Admiral Raines pressed his knuckles white against the situation table. "We've crossed into systemic warfare," he said. "This isn't about one strike anymore. This is about every Russian warhead with a digital brain." Kiev's sirens didn't stop, but something strange happened. Citizens who had been sheltering underground slowly emerged. Not because the danger was over, but because the missiles weren't falling. They were vanishing from radar mid-flight, breaking apart over uninhabited land, or crashing into military zones deep inside Russian territory. In Moscow, the Kremlin's War Council went silent. Someone had breached their entire network, and if one Ghost Lance could be hijacked, what about their nuclear arsenal? Then, at exactly 2:27 a.m., a satellite feed showed something no one expected. 3 massive ICBM silos in the Urals opened. Not for launch, but because their security locks failed all at once. "If you burn our hospitals, we will burn your fuel." And yet, this was no longer just a battle between nations. It was becoming a question of whether machines would obey their masters at all. Inside the Navy's Cyber Command bunker, the air was electric. Dozens of operators hunched over glowing screens, eyes darting between cascading code and live satellite feeds. Every keystroke was a shot fired, every packet of data, a bullet. "Ghost Lance infection spreading," one tech barked. "We've got control over 80% of their live missile telemetry." But Russia wasn't passive. In St. Petersburg, the GRU's cyber division struck back, injecting kill switch protocols designed to wipe US systems clean. Their plan was simple: blind the Americans, then retake the skies. Firewalls lit up like flares. Encryption layers snapped shut. For every missile the Navy redirected, Russia tried to reclaim 3. It wasn't just a battle. It was a knife fight in the dark, and every combatant was blindfolded. And then, the unthinkable. A Russian counterworm infiltrated the Navy's control grid. Screens began blinking red. Admiral Raines leaned forward. "What's it targeting?" The answer came cold. Our own Pacific launch systems. This was the nightmare. If Russia could hijack US launch protocols the same way the Americans had hijacked Ghost Lance, the balance of terror would shatter. At 2:39 a.m., a single line of code appeared on the main operations screen. No origin trace, no signature, just 5 words. "Stop, or we all burn." Every keyboard froze. Was it a Russian message? A rogue AI warning? Or someone else entirely? The battle wasn't just about missiles anymore. It was about who was really pulling the trigger. The operations room felt colder now, as if those 5 words had sucked the heat out of the air. "Stop, or we all burn." Admiral Raines scanned the room. "Track it. I don't care if it came from a coffee shop in Brazil or a submarine in the Black Sea. Find it." Signals teams tore into the data stream, tracing it through a maze of relays. South Africa, Greenland, Jakarta, a dead server farm in Montana. Whoever sent it knew how to vanish. Then came a chilling realization. The message had bypassed every encryption wall. NATO, NSA, even the Navy's private command loop. This wasn't just hacking, it was impossible. Commander Ortiz leaned over his console, pale. "Sir, it's not coming from any known network. It's piggybacking on a ghost channel, the same frequencies we used for deep space communications in the 90s. The room fell silent. Was it Russian psyops, Chinese intervention, or something older, hidden, waiting for the right moment to speak? Meanwhile, out over the Black Sea, Ghost Lance's payload was now down to 3 missiles, still under Russian control. Each one still deadly, each one still capable of sparking a war. Rains faced the choice that would define the night. Push forward, disable the last 3, and risk triggering the threat behind that message. Or pull back, leaving Ukrainian cities exposed, but avoiding an unknown danger. The Admiral's voice was steady. Prepare to intercept. Whoever they are, they don't get to hold the world hostage. And somewhere in the dark corridors of cyberspace, the unseen sender began typing again. The typing stopped. A heartbeat later, the comms screen flickered again. But this time, it wasn't text. It was a grainy live feed. The image showed a dimly lit room, walls covered in maps and wires. In the center sat a figure, face hidden beneath the shadow, only the glint of their eyes visible. Their voice came through, distorted, metallic, but calm. "You've got 3 minutes to stand down," the voice said. "Take out the last missiles, and the skies over Europe will go black." No one in the ops room moved. Even the hum of the electronics seemed quieter. Rains leaned in toward the mic. "You think we'll back down because you threaten us?" The shadow figure tilted their head. "I don't threaten, Admiral. I predict. Check your Western grid." Ortiz's hands flew over the keyboard. Within seconds, his face turned white. "Sir, Spain, France, Germany. The entire Western power grid just went offline. Instant blackout." The room erupted in shouts. Analysts calling allies, engineers scrambling for status updates. It wasn't just a bluff. Whoever this was had reached far beyond the battlefield. And yet somewhere in that chaos, Rain saw the pattern. This wasn't just a cyber attack. This was a message. "They're not after our ships," he said quietly. "They're after our choices." 3 missiles still armed. 3 minutes left. The clock on the wall ticked louder than a heartbeat. 2 minutes left. The air in the command center felt like it was closing in. Every eye was on Admiral Rains, waiting for the order. He could feel the weight of every civilian, every soldier, every allied nation pressing on him in that moment. "Sir," Ortiz said urgently, "we can launch Falcon Net. Direct strike on the missile carriers before they hit." Rains shook his head. "Falcon Net will burn every satellite we've got in that orbit. We lose eyes over the Pacific for weeks." "But we stop them," Ortiz countered. The shadowed figure on the comms leaned forward just enough for their mouth to catch the light. A smirk. "You've already lost," they said. "All that's left is deciding how loud your funeral will be." That was it. Rains slammed the console. "Falcon Net, fire!" Ortiz didn't hesitate. His fingers moved with surgical precision, punching in the launch codes. Across the ocean, from the belly of a US Navy submarine hidden in the depths, the counterstrike began. Above Ukraine, the night sky tore open. Not from the incoming Russian missiles, but from the streak of high-orbit interceptors, cutting across the darkness like burning spears. The first missile, gone in a flash. The second, shattered into fragments before it even broke cloud cover. But the third kept going. "Impact in 90 seconds, a voice called out. Everyone's breath caught. The third missile streaked toward its target. A Ukrainian coastal fuel terminal. Ortiz's voice was trembling but steady. "We can still take it if we burn the backup interceptors." Rains didn't blink. "Do it!" The interceptors fired, screaming through the upper atmosphere like arrows tipped with fire. The control room went silent. Everyone watched the tracking screens. 1, 2. The blip was closing in. Then, the feed turned white. No explosion, no impact reading, just static. "Did we hit it?" someone asked. The static cleared to reveal live satellite footage. The fuel terminal stood untouched. The missile had vanished. "Where is it?" Rains demanded. A new alert flashed on the screen. Unidentified signal detected over Black Sea. Source unknown. For the first time, even Ortiz looked shaken. "That wasn't us," he said quietly. Rains turned to the comms, but the shadowed figure was gone. All that remained was a single message scrolling across the screen. "If you burn our hospitals, we will burn your fuel." The sirens started again, and somewhere, far above the clouds, another signal was already moving toward Ukraine.